It's a cultural revolution. I hate it. Okay. But I don't see other choice than doing that. Okay. And we must try to have merge a relationship between Quebec Solidaire and the NDP, the way with the example I just given. Okay. And I think that you and your the Socialist caucus that you, Socialist Action is like a kind of leading, if I'm understanding it well, must bring the independence question at the core of the caucus and really have hard discussion on that right now. And from now on, you've got to proceed in French and English on an equal footing with translation, simultaneous translation, like it was 25 years ago. I remember that. Okay? And we have to come up with some kind of pan-Canadian strategy. Okay? I'm not sure which one, but that's the way to go. And we have to go fast. Because those bureaucrats leading the NDP for now are destabilized. So we have to go fast and unite those people. It's quite a challenge, I must. And we could break our neck, obviously, but Trotskyists are used to breaking their neck, right? So it wouldn't be new. But it's an historical opportunity as far as I'm concerned. We got that merging between the national and the social question. Let's go for it. Merci. Merci.
Well, I go back a little bit further here, and the dimension I wanted to bring in was the Bolivian one. Pardon me. Because it is the first First Nations government in this hemisphere, and because capitalism got its capital from the gold mines or the silver mines of Potosi way back when, and we should all be reading Eduardo Galeano's book, The Bleeding Veins of Latin America. The open veins. It explains, from a Marxist point of view, the boon that capitalism got from suppressing the First Nations. In the Latin American case, they were too many to be slaughtered, so they worked them to death in concentration camps, to the extent that the mothers slaughtered their infants to spare them such a life of misery. I went to Bolivia for 11 days in 2009 as an election observer for the first, not exactly the first, Ecuador had one too, plurinational constitution. And this was brought about by the demand for constituent assemblies, for popular consultation about how to replace this current state, this comprador bourgeois state that had a ruling white elite that benefited while the overwhelming majority was exploited in misery. What else is new? That also is a common thread, whether it's the gaz de schiste in Quebec or the tar sands or in Peru. It's a big mining development that was stopped 2 days before the election. The First Nations and the northern communities know first well the ravages of mining, but we're all hungry. And just like our opportunists in the US, they're trying to get a job. Sometimes the stomach is more important than the heart. The mechanism of this plurinational constitution is something that we should also bear in mind. And the First Nations have already built bridges, I think, in the climate justice issue with the spearheading of Morales on Cochabamba, the failure of Copenhagen. We have more than one sail in our boat that we can use. And as I say, on the constitutional one, what did I say the last time on this? That the constitutional elephant has risen in the plurinational rooming house that Canada represents, to what extent, and this is what I want to throw up as a question mark, to what extent, of course, the party brass will rise to this occasion is not much cause for opportunism. It's ironic to the extreme that L'évêque's Sovereignty Association was in reality nothing more than what Harper is promising today, or has proclaimed, a nation within Canada. That was what Sovereignty Association meant. The dynamics, of course, exceeded it, but L'évêque, with his RCMP agent Claude Morin in tow, did their best to frustrate those expectations. But anyway, so I close my remark by saying we must build this blue-orange caucus, because the blue in my case refers to the blue flag of Quebec's sovereignism. It is going beyond the reach of the capital S Socialist caucus, and especially when it brings in the ecological climate dimension as well. But the focus obviously has to be that we must do this as deputies for the Quebecois in the rest of Canada, and we must build bridges in both directions, and fast.
That sounds. John O?
Okay, these truly are questions this time. I'm usually asked rhetorical questions.
Before you continue, sorry, I forgot to tell the panel that we will be taking 4 or 5 questions and then coming back to them, so if they want to take notes. Sorry, John.
Okay, that's fine. So these really are questions I don't have the answer, so I have one each really. For Roger, just how, other than through socialism, can Native peoples say they're going to control the resources that they own or that they live over, when you have really in Canada a totally integrated population of people living all over together, other than on some reserves, and at the same time giving credence to the idea that no matter how long people live in Canada, new immigrants should all have equal rights together. So how do you actually, other than through, I know socialism is the answer, way where we can control our own resources, but how can natives actually say, we're going to control these resources, and they have to have other agreements with the rest of Canada or whatever? How do you work that out? So I'm asking you just that question. For Mark, just I wonder if you really meant what you said when you said the weakest link of the Canadian bourgeoisie is really the separatist problem. Isn't really the weakest link of the Canadian bourgeoisie still the class contradictions? And the idea of, do we need a socialist and independentist caucus? A lot of times we say that for us to have an opinion in English Canada, it's paternalistic to say that we can dictate what should happen or even have strong ideas of what happens in Quebec. But to say that we're going to be pro-independentists in the Socialist caucus, I don't know. I mean, definitely support complete right to self-determination is up to them to decide, but I don't know, that might fracture the Socialist caucus to say that we are for the sovereignty and independence of Quebec. I don't know how that would work out in the Socialist caucus. Another question. There's 3 questions. That's good enough.
Okay, Judy?
Yeah. In Quebec, the ruling class tried to divide the native people from the Quebecois by saying, well, if Quebec separates, why can't the native people also separate? And so the only way that Quebec really could, the only way the national question in Quebec could really be achieved is if the native people also have their rights as native people in Quebec, and across the country for that matter.
Thank you, Judy. I see you, Doug. I have you on the list. Chris. And then your next step.
I think this question has arisen before historically in the case of Russia after the revolution. Lenin managed to come up with a solution to this problem, and I suggest that we consult that and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Doug, and then Barry, and then we're coming back to the panel.
Okay. Well, I see these as some very key and important questions to our country. I'm hoping that Roger can answer the questions that are very strong and with a more right wing, and if it's from the States, perhaps even worse, here, bad enough. And you're going to have some really good layouts of exactly what you want to do, how you want to accomplish it, and you're going to have a hard struggle, but you're going to need a lot of allies, and it looks like the allies are here. The second thing that I might want to think about being a consideration, the Americanization that I believe, is it John brought up? That, I think, fits very well into the feeling of a people that where the heck is this country going, and the only choice we have is orange, as you refer to it. I'm not used to that in English Canada, but starting to become used to that sort of blue, orange, whatever phrasing. I see a reaction coming when brothers across the border see things that have a big parallel, some opening up of the corruption of the system, a consciousness throughout of that corruption and it being an inherent part of the state. And when it was last strongly approached by a group of people getting together, there was a very strong reaction. People like our brothers from the States and others had the strings pulled of, we have information on you, and you will go down very quickly if you open your mouth and go the wrong way. You're going to pull the plug right now. It was corruption all through the background in a whole bunch of ways, a whole bunch of dirty information pulled on the waffle. It was called something that I think you'd be familiar if you saw a movement, and it was viewed as a movement that the NDP could carry for an independent socialist Canada. You're talking about something that some background, very corrupt forces will fight very hard and very dirtily to destroy and nip in the bud if they possibly can.
Thank you.
You're going to have to be fully aware and not be paranoid and be very glad that you have the opportunity.
Thank you. Barry?
Thank you very much, Roger, Robbie, and Mark, for very thoughtful and important presentations. Really much appreciated by all of us, I'm sure. I want to address the question, why is Socialist Action, Ligue pour l'Action Socialiste, for Quebec self-determination, which we advocate strongly, as we advocate Aboriginal self-government very strongly across English Canada, and for Quebec independence, that we advocate openly and strongly in Quebec? Well, fundamentally, it's of course because we're for national liberation, because no people can be free as long as they oppress another people. That's simple. And that was the lesson that Marx drew for the British workers in relation to the Irish question more than a century ago. That is fundamental. It applies everywhere in the world, you know, from Palestine to the Philippines, to a Canadian state.